So we have just seen Andrei Julavsky after 15 years coming back. He's delivering a film that is a portrait of artistic creation of a cosmos, of a world in a way, and it is in a way can be seen as an act of resistance, this unique creation, in a time when one has the impression what we see becomes ever more formatted. Would you say that this kind of fantastic world is becoming a rarity in cinema today? I don't know who you maybe.
Well, I think fantastic is in a general, as a general concept, is not so rare. I mean, but in the sense that that it gambles with cinematographic language in a way that it reflects at the same time that it builds a world. It reflects on its own building. I think yes. It's funny because. Just a detail, but I think it's important. The place where the film was shot, Sintra, is a totally artificial landscape that was built, created by the king some centuries ago, with trees from all over the world when Portuguese were doing the discoveries. And so the idea was to build a cosmos, a sample of the world in that place. So it's a very particular nature, and it's where Polanski shot The Ninth Gate, and there is a big tradition of mysticism and also, they say, of witchery, etc. So I think this, and I'm talking about this because it has to do with this capacity that some authors or some creators have of creating or establishing their own rules or their own process and their own language. And for instance, in this film, each object is like the beginning and the ending of something. No, it's always the beginning of danger and the principle of form. But at the same time, they are able to reflect on that, and that I think it's a bit rare. I can only think like very recently, like Jean-Claude Brissot's last film, for instance.
Yeah, I don't think it is. Thankfully, it is not that rare. I think maybe. There's a perception that it's becoming rarer, but I think this has to do with the popularity of these kinds of movies. They used to be more popular than they are now, but they're still there. There's just fewer people that are watching them. But thankfully, they're still there. I think actually there's probably more movies now than there used to be ever before, because it's become so much cheaper to make them. So there's a possibility for these kinds of worlds to exist. Of course, I mean, you need talent and you need experience, and these things take time. But no, they're definitely still there.
Yeah, I was talking about percentage.
No, but let me phrase it in a different way. It seems that the influence of documentary or television or news even is more pressing than ever on fictional filmmaking. It seems that many, not just festivals, but seems programmers and even distributors, this seems to be the one thing that seems to be attractive for them. That the stories that tends towards the real, from all over the world. Do you think the documentary aspect of filmmaking is becoming more prominent than ever? Do you think it's even has becoming not, I wouldn't say suffocating, but perhaps overwhelming the cinematic landscape of the moment?
Well, I mean. Okay, I'm gonna be the devil's advocate here, because I think your question almost seems to imply that there is no room for world building in documentaries, which I think is not true. But you would be more well placed to talk about that than me, I think. But I do think that there's a bigger percentage of movies that have gone into that sort of gray area in the middle. I think that is something that we've seen in the last decade, and that is a very interesting thing. I mean, there used to be a more clear-cut difference. It was a documentary or it was a fiction film, and now there's a lot of hybrids where we're not really sure what they are. But I mean, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I think that's very interesting. I mean, it's just the evolution of cinema.
Yeah, I think it depends on your what we're talking about when we talk about documentary, because it can go from like grand reportage almost to films that we can say, I don't know, experimental. Or so. I have a bit of a problem on classifying genre of gender in films. Anyway, what I do think is that we should. Reality is not facts. Reality is not only about facts. It implies also imagination, no?
And feeling.
And feeling and emotions and expectations and desire. So even if we want to talk about documentary film language, I would try to maybe narrow and say that there is a huge possibility of filmmaking if we think about documentary or film of the real or cinema of the real or non-fiction in this way, that it implies imagination, feelings, etc., 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 and most of all, a creator, which means someone who is actually proposing a world in itself or a way of organization. And then I can't see any competition. I mean, I think the other day there was someone saying that visual arts is the thing that is imposing itself a lot, because visual artists also do films now. I don't know. I just think that a lot of possibilities are open, a lot of the material dispositives, strategies. And the thing is that it's harder maybe it's harder to find our own way as spectators in the middle of all this abundancy. But, and maybe that's why I was talking about rarity. When it's not rarity, it's just a small percentage of these films. But I don't know, I don't think television is so, maybe I'm talking from a very privileged place, but I don't think now television is so influential on film in general. Maybe it is for some parts of the documentary production worldwide. It has to do with funding schemes, with where you want to show your films, etc., but not in this broad sense. I don't know.
I mean, for me, television, it's a very difficult debate now. But I think what's happening is, because we have all these new content creators, like Amazon and like Netflix and Hulu and things like that, it's become increasingly vague even what television means. And I think this is, in a way, this is running parallel to what is happening between fiction and non-fiction. I think it's just sort of all opening up and becoming like one big arena of possibilities of storytelling in a way, which I think is fascinating. I mean, we live in an interconnected world, so I think it makes sense that that is happening.
Yeah, when I try to establish a criteria about, as I'm programming a festival that is called Doclisboa, I'm supposed to think about this. So when I try to find the criteria for because it's interesting, and it's an interesting challenge to have a matrix on documentary as a starting point. So when I try to establish to myself a criteria, and it's not a system, it's not a theory at all, but I prefer to think about, to place the question more in terms of what is the experience for the spectator with this program. What is the experience that is the experience, the multiple experiences that are possible with this program towards a relationship to reality, and that can be built in dialogue, with dialogues between films, with films that sometimes we read as fictions, but sometimes programmed in some other context. We can look at them from a perspective that enhances their connection to reality, actually. So that's what I mean. Of course, then there are more classical language documentary, but today I watched Wang Bing's new film, and you could say, okay, it's a very classical documentary. I don't know what that means. It's a good classic documentary, but anyways, I think there's a lot of imagination coming out of it.
And also, I mean, think of something like Arabian Nights by Miguel Gomes. I mean, like, is that fiction or is it a documentary? It's like, I think it's both at the same time, and it's or neither, yeah.
And do you think, the spectator's reception, just like the one thing you were talking about, is it easy now? Not like just like to channel our way through all of these content, but is it easy for us, like to receive this in a more, I don't know, linear way or something? Do you think it's like the audience are still receptive to these types of stories, or not, or is it the same? Yeah.
It depends on the context. When you program to a context, in a context. You don't program abstractly. So it depends on how. I believe that it's not about what people are receptive. It's about how you get a connection to where you are and the people who you are programming to, and how you find the right way to place something into a context. And that means not only the physical place, or the way if you put tables or you take out the tables or anything, the physical conditions, but also the discourse you build, all the work of a programmer. So, I had huge surprises with the people in Doclisboa, for instance, with the audience, and it's a very big audience for a small country. And there were big surprises in both senses. Films that we thought would never have any enthusiasm with the audience. They were sold out, and others that we thought didn't. I think it has more to do not with the theme, which actually I think it's a big mistake. Like programming, for instance, documentary in a subject-oriented way. It's not about the theme, it's not about these very particular and objective issues, it's about the way you program.
Which are the, you were talking a lot about festivals, and that's, I think, one important thing, an instance that is kind of creating this transmission between what what a filmmaker or what the film creation does and what the public gets. What are other institutions that are now forming? Because as you said, there is a huge offer, and on the other hand, it's getting more and more difficult to navigate your way around. Is that already formed out, or is that still in the process of being negotiated?
I think we're still working on that, and we're still trying to figure out how to bring the best of the content to the masses. But I don't think that's a question that'll ever go away. I think that's quite a normal thing. I think that the main difference now is that there's just so much content of it. We've never had that much content. And it is, for the moment, a problem. We don't really know how to channel it. And there are things like Netflix, they program and they use algorithms, and that's like a new way that they're trying to figure out how to give you what you want as a spectator. And I think that's very fascinating. I don't know if it's a solution, but it's definitely evolving, yeah.
What do you think, like the abundance of these channels, how do you think will affect the process of work creation, of, like, in other words, making films? Is it gonna be easier since there is like an abundance of channels now that can have so many content, or is it getting more difficult because there are now, as you said, more content than ever? And at the same time, like as you were mentioning, it seems there's so much content than ever, but we as an audience, we don't know where to go.
Well, I think one of the problems is, I just came from Sundance before coming to Berlin, and the market there was very upset by the fact that Amazon and Netflix were able to plunk down 10 or 20 million for one movie, which is not money that Sundance movies are used to. So it feels like a big, an upset, a sort of disturbance of the market. But I think that is normal in the beginning. Things like that always happen. And Amazon, if they buy 3 of these things that cost 10 million each, and then they figure out that no one is watching them, then it'll sort itself out. But I think it is influencing the type of content that we get to see, for sure. I don't really know how yet, because it's too early, I think. Places like Amazon and Hulu, they are experimenting with what the audience wants. I think it's great when they can greenlight an 8-hour series, even a documentary series, without having to go through the testing and making a pilot and see whether it works. They can just go for it. But so in that sense, it has a direct impact on what we'll get to see. But I think it's too early to say if that's, what sort of direction that's going, and if it's a positive or a negative thing, and how it'll shake out in the end. I don't know. We'll see.
Have any comment?
No, I agree. I mean, I don't think it will make anything easier in terms of creation, because I don't think doing cinema is easy, even if you do it with your mobile or with YouTube archive films. But in terms of production and how you get to do, how you concretely get to do the things, and which kind of focus appear. But I agree, I don't think we are able now to predict or to systematize these new changes.
What is in what sense would you say that you have? I mean, we're dealing with a complex relationship here between, on the one hand, what the author wants, and on the other hand, what the producer wants. And in the past, there was always this confrontation, or there used to be a certain time when you had this confrontation between these two instances. And this is kind of going away in a certain sense, because there is not this one figure maybe of a producer anymore demanding anything. Do you see new mechanisms coming in place that kind of create in a way this energy that actually forms a world that makes an abstract idea into the shape of a world, which used to be something like this dialectic process between the producer and the author and this creative idea, and this seems now to be very much evolving, also with effects on the aesthetic side.
Well, I think basically not a lot has changed. I mean, we're still talking about the things that we've always talked about, which is the difference between commerce and art. Because making movies professionally or semi-professionally costs money, and someone needs to pay that money. And then some people might want their money back. Or in the case of European cinema, when governments are investing their money, they want their money's worth. They don't necessarily want their money back, but they at least want it the quality of the product to be good enough to sort of warrant spending that taxpayer money. But I don't really think that has changed.
I do. Yeah, I do think. I mean, I don't know in general, but I think that the market is much more complex now. And it's though there are more ways of getting money to make films, it's also more difficult because it's a lot of more production houses, more filmmakers, more producers, and also in this amalgam of information, there is one thing which is called communication, which became enormously important, and not only communication but everything around visibility, your visibility as a producer, which means that you will have capacity to do certain projects or not, etc. So I think now maybe producers have to use a lot of energy in this market process. Well, that maybe, because for instance, Paulo Branco was talking about the way he still wants to do cinema, and it's great, of course, but Paulo Branco is Paulo Branco. He can do that because everyone knows him. If a 30 years old producer came here and said that, he would be crazy.
Wants to be the new
would
Paulo
be a kamikaze.
Yeah. No, I think one thing that we do have to keep in mind, and which maybe wasn't as visible before and it's now becoming very visible and very noticeable, is the fact that there's a finite audience. I mean, it's becoming cheaper and cheaper and cheaper to make movies or to make content, but it's not like there's an endless audience for this product. And so in a sense, it might be a negative thing, because there might be too many movies out there, and it becomes harder to find the right movies. And people, they might watch a couple of hours a day, but most people have a job and a life, and they can't spend 24 hours consuming content every single day. So that is something that we have to keep in mind, and I think that's where the producers might be struggling. And as you said, in communication becomes very important to sort of make sure that your project gets noticed.
Yeah, and also about this dialogue, I think it differs from culture to culture, from place to place, but in Portugal, I'm sure that most of the filmmakers feel quite alone, which means that there are not many chances of a productive dialogue. So I see that more and more the relationship with peers or with programmers or with critics is crucial, actually. So maybe this is also there are people who are coming into the process now that are becoming like crucial, and also to help this lack of time and energy from producers. That's what I notice.
I'm just curious. So, like within this vast and very diverse landscape, and like where like a certain filmmaker has a certain vision that he has to go to through many agents or many, I don't know, whatever you want to call them, in order to build his own world. At the same time, I think we're also seeing many prominent producers, maybe not so big, but still producers who can move projects. And again, within this landscape, who can claim the authorship of a certain work? Is it still? I think we're, and correct me if I'm wrong, maybe we've passed the age of auteurs, that now, sometimes it can be, these days, in many cases, it's the producers. Sometimes it's the, I don't know, distributor. So is it easier now? Is it still there?
I don't think that the author theory was a good thing to begin with, so if we can get rid of that, I'll be very happy. But no, I mean, for me, cinema, it's a collective art. And then obviously there needs to be a captain on the ship, but very few directors can make movies on their own. And the people that do, I mean, normally make terrible movies. So, yeah, no, I don't really, I mean, I think it's changing, but
in what sense?
I think it's...
And why?
Why is it changing? Yeah, I'm not an oracle, so I don't know that. But no, I think it is changing, maybe because there's different money influxes and things, and there's more possibilities, and because it's becoming harder to be noticed, and because even the places where you can go to show your movie, like Berlinale, we were talking about this earlier, it's become so big. Like, what does it mean now to be selected as a movie by the Berlinale when there's 180 features that are screened here, Maybe you'll have sold out screenings, and the people here in the audience, maybe they're from Berlin or maybe they live here, and it's interesting for them. But obviously, if you're the producer and you have put your own money into this, you want this movie to be sold. But if there's 179 other movies, how do you get your movie noticed to the people that can make make it a viable thing for a producer to make another movie?
Yeah, I think cinema is a collective art for sure, and also I would say that this, but it was. I was thinking about, I don't know, for instance, Dominique Gagnon's film work. Of course, it puts into question all this, but if you look at films that are made with archives also, but you don't have, I think authorship may be replaced by some other concept that implies not so much the creation of something, but the arrangement of something. And that is a collective effort. I think Cosmos is a very interesting example for this. And actually, I liked very much the connection between both films, because when I was watching Denis Cote's film, I was thinking that you could see, I was thinking when he said that love is the most important thing, and that you could see these people in two ways. As someone who, I was thinking, when do you look at someone sleeping? Either you love the person, or you want to, or you're invading the person and you want to discover his or her unconscious, illegitimately. There's not other reason to look at someone sleeping. So I was thinking about these two options and thinking about this process of doing something, of arranging something in Cosmos. And both characters, the writer and his friend is always trying to invade things, trying to give order to things. No, he says he doesn't have faith, and it has to do with this explanation of reality. And the other one is trying to somehow simultaneously accept reality and build reality for himself. So it's a passionate gesture, like a love gesture. So this to say that it's about arrangement more than creation, I think, and that is collective in the sense that not just a team, producer, distribute, but history. I mean, here you had history. This film wouldn't exist not just without Gombrowicz, but without Bergson and all the other ones, not just Eddie Coates, but others. So I don't know. I think authorship is really a very narrow.
Well, I mean, we can connect the idea of authorship in a sense to the sort of really big question is like, is anything original? You know, because that would be the definition of authorship if it's something that came from one singular person, and I don't think that's really the case anymore. It's very hard to be completely original now.
So can we say that actually this is a portrayal maybe of the struggle of, could we say that Cosmos is maybe the portrayal of the struggle of an author and the failure of an author to create something of his own in the face of all the pre-existing and the forces working against him, like the historical forces and the forces of the world, of the objects themselves?
Somehow, yeah. I was thinking. Well, I didn't elaborate a lot about the film, but I was thinking that it's kind of an effort of an author to deal with the fact that everything around him everything around him is a symptom of the world, of the whole, and a symptom of the failure, of the void, the emptiness, no? And that he himself is a symptom of that, not just physical symptoms, but emotional. And so I think his effort to write comes from, on the one hand, his efforts to understand and to order, to arrange, but on the other hand, his efforts to exist, really, in this amalgama of symptomatic events. I mean, it's very meaningful, the fact that these two women, Caterette and Gina, it's the same person with and it's not just about masks; it's about arrangements of the same materiality, which is this idea of symptomatic reality, you know. So
I mean, they're both trying to understand the world around them. I think that's the main, and that's where the whole thing with the dead birds and things come in. Is like what they're trying to do is understand what is going on, and I mean, for that they need to categorize and arrange, and then obviously they have very different ways of doing that. The character played by Joan Libero, he's a very experiential person. Like, he needs to, I mean, you see the bruises on his body, and he's all about the outside. I mean, he's wearing all these fancy clothes, and he's someone that is thinking about the outside, and then the other one is trying to understand it from within. But I think in the end, yeah, I mean, you need a bit of both.
But it's classical. It's in that sense.
Yeah.
It is classical, but it could also be something that is, in a way, a comment upon this. What we are saying, the new technology. That in a certain way, you know, you would think that a new technology gives the author a very much larger personal freedom to create everything and arrange everything they want, because you don't physically need, you know, that much help anymore in a certain way. But then again, you know, the objects in themselves have a resistance to that, and kind of don't always go along with that.
Yeah, absolutely. But that's, I think it has to do, again, thinking about Wang Bing's film that I saw today, so I'm still, I think it has to do with your capacity and your sensibility, which is kind of simple in a way, simple in the sense that it's not very much, at least for me, I don't like to theorize too much about that, but it has to do with your capacity of establishing a contact zone between you and reality, where you exist.
You and not you, basically, I mean.
Yeah, you and not you. And a contact zone and a sensibility that allows that you build and work, and this, even with the technology, you work in a way that it's, in the one hand, it's you are looking for something, but on the other hand, you are also receiving things in a way that both merge. You find a place where there's no difference between what you're looking for and what you get in your film.
Yeah, well, I think, I mean, if you're trying to understand the world, it's really in the end about trying to understand yourself, because you're a part of it. So it's like the part and the whole are the same thing.
We want to open up the room for discussion. So, any questions or comments?
We don't bite.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to know if it was shot digitally or in analog film, in the normal old way to say it. The film,
The film,
you know it.
I think it was shot digitally. I would think, yes. We're not sure, so, but I guess so. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Just to know, to talk about the technology we were discussing about, and you know, I come from music, and I've seen a lot of change in the tools we have as composers, and I see it's happening in film right now. So I see that maybe that is going to influence the way people create films to make them finished. So what do you think about this, about the tools, you know, like you know, the new cameras that are so small that are incredible, and they look like film basically, and all these new tools like plugins, you know.
No, I mean, I think it has definitely changed on the production side of things. I'm not quite sure if I've seen that big a change on the creative side of things. I'm hoping maybe that it'll come. I think on a documentary field, maybe we've seen it more than in fiction, because cameras are just cheaper. So I think there have been more personal documentaries about people documenting their own lives and then putting it together. But in terms of fiction films, I don't think we've seen that big a change yet. Maybe it's coming. I don't know.
Yeah, there are more films, of course, and there are more films about intimacy and done in a way that you feel that it wouldn't be possible to do with a lot of people there. But anyway, in the 50s, even with the 16 millimeters Eclair, you could do a film with 2-3 people. So it's not. Even though it's a new thing, it's not. I think that some things change, and I think that has to do not only with the new tools for filmmaking, but with the new tools for viewing the world. For instance, there are scales and ways of representing human body that didn't exist before. I mean, you see again in Dominique Gagnon's film, the new film of the North, you see this shot of a family that is shooting themselves with a selfie stick from the ceiling. You know, you have these new angles of looking at the world, because it's also the measure of your body. So suddenly the instruments are connected to other movements, no? I'm mostly curious about how this will evolve, but I think to be very straightforward, I think it's the same as some centuries ago when someone invented a new pencil. In the end, it's just new ways of new tools to do films. The only exception, I would say, when I really felt that it couldn't be done before, was maybe like Julian Donkey Boy by Harmony Korine, you know, that uses these spy cameras attached to the clothes. So you really have this technology-based, and the Harvard Sensory Ethnography Lab, this Leviathan experience that was really, it's very, I mean, I have problems with it. I could discuss it, but anyways, it's very interesting to see as a proposition with that kind of technology that it couldn't exist somewhere in another way.
And even perhaps, like, wouldn't you also like say in like the documentaries coming out of like war zones, like the where you like actually where the technology has allowed filmmaker more intimacy or more connection with with what's actually like happening in there.
Well, I mean, something like Syria Silvered Water, or what it was called, Horizonte.
Or The Square.
Yeah, I mean, these are things, I mean, they're even using YouTube footage and things like that. That was something that wasn't available to that extent before, obviously. But there, I think we have the same problem as with movies in general. It's like, how do you, I mean, if you go into YouTube, how many, billions of hours of footage is there on there? So it's not necessarily a blessing.
Yeah. No, of course, I was talking about the technology. Of course, the use of YouTube is new. And not just of YouTube, of surveillance cameras. You have films made with surveillance cameras, of course. But anyway, what I meant was the kind of image building that you're looking for. And there, I don't think it changed so much.
No, it does. No, I mean, even something like Leviathan, it's like, you could imagine that, that could have existed at least as an animated movie before. But I mean, now there's the technology to do it as a live action documentary. But it is not that it's introduced us to a whole new way of seeing, I don't think, not yet.
I just want you guys commenting about the language, because if you see this film and understand French is one thing, and if this film would be done in a language like English, probably what you say would be a different story, would be actually possible, because the amount of the material, text, the imagination in this poetry is so unbelievable that is very hard. What do you say about that?
Well, I mean, we shouldn't forget that it's adapted from a Polish novel, so already French is not the native language of this story. But of course, I mean, there are certain things that are always lost in translation unless you speak the language. But that doesn't mean that people shouldn't watch it in a subtitled version if that's the best thing that's available,
Yeah, but I was thinking that I understand all the language spoken, even Portuguese, because it's also some. And I was trying to see, this English translation and the French translation. Actually, it was quite good, the English subtitles. But I think it has to be. It has to do with the old problem of translation. And there's a Portuguese poet, Herberto Helder, when he translated poetry from other authors. I mean, usually ancient poetry. He didn't when he published. He didn't say translated by. He wrote changed by. Because translating is also changing, but which is good. It's a good task. But I don't see a problem in that. It just has to be done by someone who has some relationship to the text, to the original text.
Questions? Comments?
All right. Thank you very much for coming here, for discussing the way in which cinematic worlds are built, or have been built, will be built. And if you enjoyed the movie, or if you didn't enjoy the movie, you can tell everyone else about that. There's another screening on Sunday in the 21st. I think it's at noontime. And thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.